get going here. Two Club Chumps with the short game chef, Parker McLachlin. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I cannot tell you how far I went down the rabbit hole on your videos. And it goes back to Chris Bango. About 6 months ago, I go to Titleist, never had a wedge fitting, always been a low handicap, but just never really loved my wedges. And I go to Chris, and we spend 3 hours getting fitted at Titleist, and just he's talking about stuff that I'd never heard in my life. And I said, Chris, is this normal? He goes, we have pros here that have never heard about using the bounce, using the bottom of the club. And so, I had every 60 that they have, and I get 60, 54, 50, and even 46. My pitching wedge is also that. And so we go through the grinds, and actually the 60 he fit me for, I didn't love. So he sent me another one. I mean, Chris Bango, shout out, is amazing. But that whole philosophy, I was like, okay, I kind of get it, and started working with it, but I didn't really have any really practical thing. And then somehow I found you, and I was like, okay, this is what it is. Because, I grew up when I was playing competitive golf, it was, Dave Pell's Short Game Bible and Phil Mickelson, which you've had on all your videos, the hooded back your stance, chunk and spin. And, around Lakeside, I could be decent with it, but it never was really that easy. And I would chunk it a lot. Like you would just have 1 out of 8 chunks. And so after Chris and you, I mean, people started to ask me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm the short game chef guy now. That's all I do. And so 2 weeks ago, shot 64, tied my record at Lakeside. And then like last Thursday, I'm playing with Charlie Day, my good buddy who was on the podcast from Always Sunny. Great guy, great golfer. The first 5 holes, he's just like, I don't understand what you're doing. And then I just dunk one from 50 yards out. And he's like, what's going on? So anyway, so that, this whole journey from Titleist to getting properly fitted, using the bounce, never heard of that before. I can't believe, all my years. And so I just want to thank you for what you're doing, because I think you're going to change golf in a big way. I mean, there's plenty of teachers out there, but your short game, philosophy is so simple and effective. So anyway, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I need to just get that recording right there and just put it right at the front of my website and just
You
be
can
like,
have it.
this is
You have my permission to
exactly
use
why.
it. I'll send you the video. You have my permission to use it, because it's just, I'm just curious. I mean, have you always chipped like this, or did you kind of learn it over your career and your time?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hawaii, and I
Mhm.
was, I grew up hitting like that, you know, low back of the stance, handle forward, leading edge, low spinner.
Yeah.
Um, and at that time, with the grooves being what they were, a little thicker, little bit more pronounced. Those square grooves were still legal, and with a softer golf ball, dude, you could rip the cover off the golf ball
That's a
back in
good
the day.
point. I didn't think about
Yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah.
and then I kind of chipped that way on tour for a bit, but then I started to notice, like, as the groove started to change. I think it was like 2010,
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
grooves changed, and all of a sudden my ball wasn't spinning anymore, not the way that it used to, and it wasn't stopping. It was coming in too low, too hot, and it had almost the same amount of spin, but it just wasn't grabbing.
Hmm.
And I was like, there's something wrong here. I need to figure this out. And so Paul Azinger was a longtime friend. I've known him since I was probably 14, 15, 16 years old. He'd always come over to Hawaii a week before the Sony. He'd spend time there. We played 9 holes of golf together. And so I had known him for a long time, and I was kind of going through a dark place with my driver, thinking about quitting the game in like 11, 12, 13. And Paul said, hey, he said, come back to my house, come hang out with me, come spend some time. I think I can kind of declutter the cobwebs that are going on in your brain right now. And I went back there with the thought of helping my full swing and really getting myself back to a place where I could start to play golf competitively again and not be fearful of the two-way miss. And Paul helped me tremendously. But then through all that time, I probably went back to his house, probably for 7 or 8 years, 7 years, I would say. And I'd go for a week at a time, and I'd probably go 2 or 3 times a year. And it was sort of like my Tuesdays with Maury type of experience,
Right, right.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, great. I mean, this is a long answer to your
No,
simple
keep
question,
going.
but
Keep going. Yeah.
the first time that I went there to his house, um, I rented a car at Tampa and drove down to Bradenton and got to his house. And then the next morning he says, okay, you're driving to the golf course. And I was like, we're driving in my shitty rental car. And he's like, I don't have a car. And I was like, what do you mean you don't have a car? He opens his garage. He's got 12 motorcycles.
Yeah, yeah, you big
Did
boy.
not own
Oh,
a car.
wow. I didn't know that about him. That's cool.
And so, yeah, so he had one set of clubs at Gator Creek and another set of clubs at the concession golf club. And so he's like, yeah, you're driving. And so we get in the car and I'm driving and he's in the passenger seat. And we start driving down the road, and it's probably a 45-minute drive to either of those golf courses. And we just start talking. And it was like some of the most healing moments of my life, of talking about golf and the mental struggles of playing the game professionally and hitting it sideways, and Ryder Cup and how he formed the teams and all these like really, really fascinating conversations. But that was, we'd go to the golf course, we'd drive 45 minutes there, we'd have these talks about golf and about life, and then we'd play 27 holes, and then we'd drive home for 45 minutes, and we'd always, it was like our stop would be at McDonald's on the way home to get a vanilla ice cream cone.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
But yeah, that was sort of like my long answer is that was where I started to learn. Even though I had a great short game, I started to really elevate my short game and learn to understand how to use the bounce through Paul and some of the techniques that he talked about, or even just watching him and observing, like, there was a different sound when
Yeah.
he would hit a 30-yard pitch shot than when I
Yeah.
would. And there was a different sort of flight where it would come out low and then it would rise and then it would grab on the green, where mine would just sort of come out low and bounce, 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 and then check. So that was sort of my introduction to the bounce. And then as I started to explore it, I started to then measure it and be like, but I've always been told that I need to get all my weight on my front foot, that I need to get the shaft leaning forward. I need the ball position back. I want to hit ball first. And I asked Paul, and this was probably the biggest eye-opening experience, but I asked Paul, I said, hey, on this like 20-yard shot out of a fairway lie, like, where are you looking to hit this ball? Like, are you looking at the back of the ball? Like, what? He said, back of the ball. He's like, no, man, I'm trying to use the grass before the ball. And I was like,
Oh, wow.
what? And I'm like, we're into the grain Bermuda grass
Right.
in Florida.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm trying to use this grass before the ball. And I was like, so at that point I was like, I need to start learning more about this. And I started measuring what different things would look like. So I got out force plates and I had a guy help me. And we started going through all these things of like, actually at TPC Scottsdale, force plates out, measuring with TrackMan and measuring like, okay, weight forward, weight neutral, weight back. What does that do to attack angle, ball flight, spin rates, land angle? How, like, and the guy was up on the green measuring like, where is it bouncing and then where is it running out to? And the difference between like weight way forward on like a 20-yard shot to weight way backwards, right, rearwards, and the how quickly a golf ball would stop is like, you'd be like, well, why would I ever stack all my weight, 90%
Yes.
of my weight forward?
Yep. Yep.
And that was sort of like I was like, oh man, like these things that Paul is telling me, that they actually they work. Like you can measure it, but it also like works. I'm like, I'm stopping the ball between, let's say, like 3 to 4 yards, 3 to 4 and a half yards, doing it this way. The other way, doing it like way forward, I was stopping the ball between like 9 to 11 yards.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yep.
like sometimes you don't have 9 to 11 yards to stop a golf ball,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the long story on sort of like how
That's
I
incredible. I
yeah.
mean, I didn't remember Paul being such a bounce related guy. I thought he always had a lot of weight forward, but I don't really remember now. It's been so long, but I remember his short game was impeccable. And that now, what year was that when you kind of just got the force played out and you had the revelation like this is actually how we're supposed to play golf?
It was probably like 2013,
Okay.
2014. Yeah, somewhere in there, 2014, I would say. And that was sort of when was like I just did it to like just like, I just wanted to explore it on my own
Yeah.
and just be like, why is this happening? And then it wasn't until probably like really a couple years later that I actually started teaching.
Okay.
And then but I didn't do it in the beginning. I did not do it in like a teaching capacity. I did it as like a player to just learn about it.
Were you seeing results kind of as you were learning, or was it taking a while to translate?
Yeah, I mean, I was always like such a, like handle forward, weight forward,
Mm-hmm.
ball position back kind of
Mm-hmm.
guy,
Yeah.
steep angle of attack. And then all of a sudden I was like, dude, I started seeing these shots come out and I'd never seen them come out like that. Like it was like they were low, but then they would also then rise up and then they would sort of float, but then they would stop faster than any shot that I would hit
Yeah.
normally.
Yeah.
And that's where I started to understand like, wow, this is pretty cool. And then I would also start making mistakes a half an inch behind the ball, an inch behind the ball. And these golf balls were coming out almost identical to what my really good ones were coming out. And that's where I
Wow.
was like, oh, that's why these guys at the highest level are using this shot.
Right.
Right. When I talk to a Matt Kuchar or a Jason Day or a Stricker, and it's like, what? That's why you guys are doing this and stack the odds in your favor, right? So that's where I'm like, oh, these guys are playing chess while the rest of us are playing checkers.
Isn't it funny if you go back and watch the 80s, 90s, chipping and obviously driven by Mickelson. When you're the best short game, you do it a certain way. And John and I played competitively, 20 years, especially back in the old days. And like I bought the short game Bible from Pell's, memorized it. I had the clock all the way through, but it was always weight forward, hood, stinger, and it's hard to really control that. And it's just generations. And then I noticed probably 4 years ago that these guys were kind of lining up square, like you teach with feet kind of close together, ball in the middle, no more hooded, no more crazy, maybe a little shaft lean. And I'm like, what is going on here? And that's when one of my buddies, he was like, you got to go down to Titleist because I was getting free stuff from TaylorMade, but I was like, I want to go to really see because they have so many grinds and really can fit you to that, and it's crazy. And then since the last 6 months, I started watching you and started went down the Titleist. I'm seeing Scheffler and Spieth and all these guys same way. I mean, Spieth still has a little of the hands forward spinner, but like Justin Thomas really kind of middle of their stance, even on a tight lie. And I'm like, how are they doing this? So this really is the biggest revelation, I think, in golf swing learning in many years because we all,
Well, I think,
go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry, I think that when you look at a guy like Phil, right? His uh, we all think Phil is an unbelievable short game player, and he hits the most stunning, flop
Yes.
shots, escape shots of all
Yes,
time,
yes,
right?
yes, yes.
But when you actually go back and you look at his stats for the last 15 years, which I did, his strokes gained around the green, he lives somewhere between 35th and 75th on tour.
Wow.
Wow.
Steve
That's
Stricker,
shocking, right?
Steve Stricker, Jason Day, Matt Kuchar, guys that are a little bit more, let's say, quote unquote, boring.
Yeah.
Basic. Yeah.
Um, not in a bad way, but maybe like sophisticatedly simple, right? Would be a better way to put it. Um, those guys like when I went back and looked at Stricker's stats over the last 15 years, I mean, this guy is unbelievable. Like finishing in the top 15 nearly every year in strokes
Yeah.
gained around the green, right? And Jason Day, a lot of like really high, like top 5, top 10 finishes in strokes gained around the green. Matt Kuchar, the last 2 years, finished like sixth and first. Um, So you know, the perception that Phil Mickelson is the greatest short game player of this generation doesn't really play itself out in the stats.
Yeah. Isn't it funny
Now,
how that
yeah,
works?
yeah,
Maybe he's more known for this like a great imagination, right? For doing
Yes,
some stuff that like
that could be
you
it.
and I would
Yeah.
be pitching out left and just taking our medicine, and he's hitting it through, over a palm tree to 3 feet, and he's
correct.
using,
Yeah.
those great hands of his. So kind of
Now
like,
does that
Sevy too
yeah,
back in the day, right? So
right. Now does that mean that we should go and copy what
yeah,
Phil
exactly.
Mickelson is doing?
No,
Right?
because
It's
he
like,
is a
dude,
gift.
he's
Yeah.
a gift. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
and his hands are spectacular. But he's if you think about all the Phil Mickelson shots that you're like, oh, I remember that shot. They're all big, huge flop shots or bunker shots, right? And that's a certain type of a technique. The way the simpler one, sort of your standard pitch shot from inside of 30 yards, it doesn't need to go crazy high. That's maybe a little bit more mid-flighted trajectory with some spin on it. I would argue that's a different technique than what Phil's utilizing or what Phil's most comfortable with his high flop shot and his bunker shot. And I don't think that the way that I don't think that those two, I think those are two separate compartments when it comes to short game. Your flop shot is a cousin to your bunker shot. Your bump and run is more a cousin to your pitch shot. And so I think that the way that Jason Day and Steve Stricker and Matt Kuchar, Cam Smith, like these guys that have sort of very wide arcs at the bottom, they're great bump and run and great pitchers of the golf ball. Phil Mickelson, much more narrow arc. Um, he's way more handsy, way more vertical. He's great at those bunker and those flop shots.
I mean, Stricker's
So
been so successful with his putter, with his heel kind of being up off the ground a little bit. And I would say, is that kind of somewhat similar to his pitch shots from inside 20 yards? Is they don't want to get the heel involved, right? To shut that face, right?
Yeah. You
Because I'm a
teach
big advocate. That's a
hands
big
up a little,
advocate of me.
right?
I get the hands up a little bit more to where I can more pick it and pitch it. Where I don't like the heel to get involved, because then you're catching everything in its grandma and you got issues, right? So
totally,
I noticed that because I actually think that Stricker back, when he decides to retire down the road, I think he's going to probably be the next putting coach, if he wants it. I mean, Tiger used to go to him for help.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's, I see those hands being up with that putter. And I have a feeling am I right by saying that the hands are up a little bit too to
yep.
get the heel off the
And
ground?
and yeah, and as he sort of sets that lead wrist right in what we call
Hmm.
ulnar deviation, as he sets it there, even for his pitch shots, right? It then takes it away on the backstroke, so he's not able to then hinge it
Mm.
a lot on the backstroke and get real narrow. So he's able to keep it wide as he turns back. So yeah, those things they go hand in hand, and that's a big reason why he's always ranking in the top 15 or 20 in strokes gained around the green, is that his miss hits are still really, really good. Whereas, you know, my theory would be some of Phil's miss hits around the green are going to be more penal
Yeah.
than Steve Stricker's miss
And we
hits.
only see the beautiful shots on TV coverage, right? Isn't that true? Well, I
Yep,
think back to Stricker. Remember, Stricker was about to quit. He goes to Minnesota and spends 6 months doing the no hands thing. I remember watching his show on it, and he comes back. I don't know what he won the next year, but he won multiple times. And that kind of that now that you mentioned, that was almost like the first revelation, like the whole super, descending blow thing is hard to control. And I mean, my old, we have a short game area at my club that's 135 and in, four greens, and I would go 135, 30, 20 and do the whole thing. And they were all sky ball, max effort spinners. And it's just so hard to control that. And cooking up with the chef have made it so simple. And I'm seeing your runway now from Azinger, Stricker, and your thought process, because now that I watch your 125 and in video, and I'm just like, that's so subtle. I mean, because I've always really struggled. I'm 6'3". I really struggle with the lower shots and just a little 60% on the front, a little hands ahead. And I'm watching the tour now and I see everyone in the Masters doing the half 3/4 finish that you talk about. I'm like,
Yep.
what the heck? Why didn't someone teach
Yeah.
me this 20 years ago? I would have won more stuff, you know? It's crazy. So I
Yeah,
love,
I think like my philosophy is basically like I want to look at the guys that are on the PGA tour that do it the best. And so, and again, like I would say Phil does it the best, like flop shot, bunker shot, insane,
yeah,
really, really good.
yeah,
But pitch shot wise, I would say Steve Stricker, Jason Day, Matt Kuchar, Cam Smith, these guys are probably the best in the world at what they're doing.
yeah,
What is it that is the common thread? Well, they've all got a pretty wide arc at the bottom. They're not coming in there super steep and then exiting. They're not doing that. They're coming in on the shallower side, which allows them to really manage their ball speed. And that's on those shots from inside of 50 yards. That's the most difficult thing to do is manage your ball speed while still maintaining spin on the golf ball. Now, it just so happens that those guys do it in a way that's very repeatable for the amateur to do it. And it gives the amateur a wide margin of
yeah,
error.
yeah,
And that's all I'm trying to do. I'm trying to take what the guys on the PGA Tour know and intuitively do, take that onto the amateur scene and be like, look, this is the way that you guys need to do it because it's repeatable. It stacks the odds in your favor, and it actually is going to help you to make a swing that's like actually free with your body on the way through. Because like you've seen most of your amateur players that you play with that you go out and it's like they get in this spot, they're up here, and all of a sudden they're trying to hit a 12-yard shot, and you're like, what are you going to do from here to get it to go 12 yards?
John Daly D cell.
Everything's going to stop. Your knees are
Right.
going to buckle. You're going to chunk it. You're going to slow down at the golf ball. So I'm trying to do the opposite to help people to be more athletic, more free, more aggressive through the golf ball. And if I can help them to do that, that's when I start seeing the yips go away.
Yeah.
That's when the flinches, the saves, all those start to go away as I start to make people more athletic on the way through.
Well, I watched
It's
one of your
amazing.
videos and you were talking about like you can hit an inch behind, you can hit an inch and a half behind. And I did that test and it was very similar to just perfect contact. And I'm like,
Right?
that is perfect contact because you have this bounce. I mean, I just
Gliding.
never it makes it so easy. I hit a super flop, short-sighted, a week ago just to show off for these guys. So they were calling me the sous chef all day. And I was like, okay, perfect. I'll be the sous chef. And I was getting super cocky and I took a full light swing and just let it float down and it went straight up and stopped 2 inches away. And they're like, what are you doing? And I said, chef, and it
My
really,
man.
but it's like, it's crazy how simple it is. I wish someone had told me this 20 years ago. And it's like I said, it's really the most exciting thing. And I used to be a golf agent. I represented Chris Como and a bunch of guys and technical this and this, but like this is actually revolutionary. I think a lot of the big full swing coaches, they're on the same plane. They're on the same, they have different ideas, but this is I cannot believe that this hadn't been figured out sooner. And even when Bango told me to it at Titleist, I'm like, this can't be real. Like you're just trying to sell me some clubs. And he goes, no, it's real. And I get this from pros on different tours that come in and they're like, wait, you want me to hood my 60? I was like, no, I want you to open. You know what he does. He has that
Mm-hmm.
open face tester. He wants you to hit a spinner that stops. I'm like, I'm going to blade this. And he's like, no, you're
Yep.
not. So anyway, I think it's an incredible the use of bounce and how getting fitted really makes a big deal.
Well, I think one of the interesting things is that I've done it with a lot of good players. Is just hand them a wedge, like their normal wedge, and usually it's a 4 degrees of bounce. And I love seeing this club. I love seeing the leading edge sit so flush to the ground, and
Right,
I don't want to see
right,
it sit up at all,
right,
right?
right,
And
right.
then they're just hitting these like knuckleball,
Yeah.
knuckleball, knuckleball, and I'm like, all right, let me give you a different wedge. Let me give them like a 10-degree bounce or a
Mhm.
14-degree bounce,
Yeah.
and they're just like, I don't know if I love this. I was like, don't look at the bottom. Don't do anything. Just hit that same exact shot you were just hitting from 10, 15, 20 yards, whatever it is. And they get up there and they just make the exact same swing, and it goes low with spin. And
Yeah.
they're like, what? And then they hit the next one. Same thing. The bounce is going to, for potentially a player like that, usually I see it with really good players that have a little steeper angle of attack. They will get that low bounce wedge. It'll dig in just a little bit more. And if they get the higher bounce wedge, all of a sudden this thing glides on top of the surface.
Yeah.
And now they're hitting grooves 2 and 3 and 4 on the wedge, which is forcing that ball to it forces the top of the club to go this way when you hit lower on the face. Forces the top of the club to come this way. So the center of gravity is forcing it this way, which is forcing the ball out lower, which is providing actually more spin on the golf ball. So they start with the higher bounce wedges. It keeps them kind of gliding on top of the surface. And now they're hitting these low spinners without having changed any technique. And it's like people are mind blown by some of this stuff. So it's always like crazy important to go in and get a wedge fitting. And I found the opposite sometimes too, where some people are maybe too shallow. They'll bounce into it with a higher bounce wedge, and they get them a lower bounce wedge, and it's just right. So it's really important to sort of find what works best for you. And then you got to throw in, well, hey, do you play your golf in Seattle where it's wet and soggy, or are you playing your golf in Midland, Texas, where it's firm and compact? And that plays a role in it too. But wedge fitting is it's so much fun to go and do that and hit shots from fairway lie, from the rough, to hit flop shots, to hit out of the bunker. To find the right grind for you is like it's a really neat experience.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, with Titleist, like we spent hours on my 60. We fitted it. He stamped it with all this cool stuff for me. And I took it, and 3 weeks later, I'm like, Chris, this doesn't fit. This is just too much bounce. Because he was, he explained that, with Titleist, it says the bounce, but that's not the actual bounce. And he got out a protractor and all this stuff. And so then he got me into the M, which is not the lowest. And I'm like, I don't want the lowest. And then it was just like, that's it.
Perfect.
That made the difference. Now let's back up with you. So when did the chef start cooking? So you're finishing your pro career, and did you start teaching before you became the short game chef, or what was that transition like?
No, actually. So yeah, interesting story. I mean, I was still playing. I mean, I played 2 events on the PGA Tour last year. But Short Game Chef was born in like August of 2019.
Okay.
I'd say. So 5 years ago. I had a caddy friend of mine named Doug Schwimmer, and he'd caddy for me in a handful of events, and he was just like, I was playing 5 events a year, and I had 47 weeks where I was off.
Yeah.
Just playing out of no man's land in the PGA Tour, like past champions category.
Right.
And so I was trying to find other things to sort of keep myself busy, because it's like I hadn't made enough money to retire. I still had young kids, so they're going to school 9 to 3. And I'm like, I need to find something to earn some money and to to do something. So anyway, he suggested, he said, yo, he's like, there's, bunch of coaches are online right now. It's a hot space on Instagram with George Gankis and whatnot. You should do, your short game's so good. Like, you should do some how-to videos on short game. And I was like, all right. So he filmed like 10 or 12 for me. And he's like, now you got to come up with a name. So he helped me like create an Instagram account. I had never been on Instagram before.
Wow.
And he helped me create an Instagram account. And he's like, you got to come up with a name. And so I was like, well, yeah, short. It has to do something with short game, because that's all I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about the full swing, because for crying out loud, I can't figure out my own full swing. So I'm going to figure out. I just want to talk about short game.
Right.
And so, so I was like, well, short game wizard, or short game guru, or short game whisperer, or something like that. But that was always sort of, it always came back to like, like about me and like building myself up. And that's not what this page was going to be about. This page was going to be about sharing. And so as I thought about sharing, I thought about food. I thought about, well, what do you do with food? Well, you share recipes, right? We share ingredients. Like, oh, okay, well, what about a chef? And then I was like, short game chef. And so I created that name. because I was like, I want it, like every shot around the green has some type of ingredients, whether it's
Yeah.
open face,
Yeah.
shaft back, handle down, full release, whatever it might be. There's ingredients that go into it. And so that's how I sort of came up with it. And then so that evening I come home and I tell my wife, she's like, "Hey, how was your day? Like, what'd you do at the golf course?" I was like, "Oh, I shot a bunch of videos. I created an account on Instagram and I called myself the short game chef." And she just like full tears. She's like, "What are we doing with our lives? You are a professional golfer. You are not
Oh,
some like Instagram what." And I was like, "No, no, no. I think this is like a really good idea. Like, I can like kind of start changing like I don't think there's anybody in this space that's doing this." And anyway, full tears.
tears of joy.
She's no, no, tears of
Tears
like
of
what in
fears.
the
Tears
world?
of fears.
Yeah. So so anyway, about 2 days later, I get a phone call from Kevin Streelman, and he says, "Hey, I see that you've been doing some short game teaching. Can I spend a couple hours with you?" So the first paid lesson that I gave was to the guy ranked 93rd in the world,
Wow.
and that was how it started.
Yeah.
And it went well. It went well the first session. We worked again a week later, and he said I'd like to work with you on a full-time basis going forward. And I was like, I don't even know what that looks like, but
You're like,
all right, that sounds good.
this
And
business
so
is going now.
The chef has his
yeah, and
first
so
recipe.
That's right.
yeah, exactly. And so he, his short game got better. He had a couple of second place finishes in that fall, and then at AT&T Pebble Beach. And he was playing great. He went from 93rd to 45th in the world in like 6 months. And he was just kind of spreading the word, and there were guys up at our club Whisper Rock who all of a sudden started hearing about it, and it's difficult to chip around there, and they started reaching out, and so it just sort of spread organically. And to this day, I don't think I've ever put anything on social media saying, "Hey, I'm open for teaching at
Right.
McCormick Ranch or wherever I'm teaching. Like, I'm open for teaching. Book here." Like, I've
Right.
never done that,
Right. Right.
and
Yeah.
I'm more busy than I could possibly ever imagine.
What's your
That's
range of
great.
clients? Would you say tour pros, amateurs, high school, college teams? Like, do you just do everybody, or do you have like
Yep.
a niche?
I would say it's like 80% amateurs,
Okay.
20% some type of mini tour, LPGA, Champions Tour, PGA, Corn Ferry. Like 80% would be professional.
Yeah.
Sorry, 80% would be amateur, 20% would be professional.
Yeah. I mean,
And on the amateur side, it's usually somebody who's not like a beginner.
yeah.
It's somebody that's been in golf for a bit, and is somewhat golf savvy. The handicaps range from, yeah, probably 22, 25 down to scratch. Um, and yeah, so I would say that's what it is. The beginner golfer, I don't get a ton of like really, really new beginner golfer. Just I think
Yeah.
my price range is probably too high for a beginner to want to spend money like
Plus, I
that.
So
think you have to
Parker,
understand the basics because to get to this genius level of the short game chef, which I think is genius, I think you have to have an understanding of the basics of golf. So if you're brand new, you don't even know how to swing. Like I teach my wife, like we played Sunday, and it's like she wouldn't understand the chef. She can't cook just yet. But oh my God, that's fascinating. I just love it.
one of the things that I have is Parker is like you can only, as they say, lead them to water. You can't make them drink it, right? You can, there's a lot of things where you're gonna blow these people's mind on. Okay, here's a shot. Let's read the grass. Let's read, the shot before they're even picking their golf club, right? So some of these guys are coming to you because they got issues, right? So how much of it of being a shrink does it come into play there too? About, hey, you can hit this shot, this is how you do it. But I mean, mentally, you got a guy that's got the yips, and he only knows one shot, and you're trying to teach him multiple shots because I feel like I got a pretty good short game, and my short game's all first on read the lie. Where do I see my ball landing? How do I see my shot hitting? And then one of the things that is big for me is I breathe a lot. I take a lot of deep breaths, and I kind of make sure that my forearms and my arms are very soft, right? And they're loose because when you tense, the whole body tenses. So how much of it being a shrink is it involved there too?
Dude, I mean, yeah, everything that you just went through right there are things that I go through with clients. Um, I would say the shrink part of it, it's like where I pick the people up to that get a lesson. I pick them up in the cart staging area at McCormick Ranch, and we drive basically to the back of the range. And there's a little like 80-yard par three hole right there that I work at. And in that drive back there, I'm asking them, walk me through your golf journey. Talk to me about like where you've been, struggles, highs, lows, best part of your game, worst part of your game. Why are you here, and what are we accomplishing today? And that gives me a good sense of as to like how much heavy lifting am I going to have to do mentally? Like, is this someone that's like, I've struggled with the yips for 12 years? Then
Yep.
we got to do a lot of mental work,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
We got to start like really small, and we got to do like really build up small, brick by brick by brick by brick. If it's someone who said, look, man, I played, and I get a lot of these guys, played college golf, went to work for 10 years, had a family, and now I'm just starting to get back into golf. I'm striping it, but my short game sucks. And I feel like in the last like 2 months, I'm starting to get the yips. That guy, I see that guy a lot. And
Yeah.
that guy doesn't need as much mental heavy lifting. They need a slight technique adjustment,
Yeah.
awareness, understanding, and then all of a sudden they're off to the races. But it really does depend on how much scar tissue is there as to how much heavy lifting I'll have to do mentally.
It sounds like you give him the Azinger treatment, driving 45 minutes to concession and back that he gave to you. You're paying it forward, right?
I am, yeah, no, that's exactly it. And golf is so mental. You guys know that. It's like it's the most amazing game in the world when you're in the right headspace. You've got the right feels with your swing or your putter or your chipping, whatever it is. You've got the right feels. It's the most fun game in the world. And then if you don't have those feels, if you
Yeah.
feel off,
Yeah.
it's the most devastating game on the planet because it just makes you feel like this big.
Yeah.
And I've felt that like like the PGA Tour event that I won in Reno, the Barracuda. I mean, I hit the ball like I played a 5 week stretch in a row, and I was going to take that week off, and I I I found something on the Saturday and Sunday of Canada where I finished like I don't know, maybe top 25, but I really felt like I was striking the ball well. Like I felt like I knew where my swing was, I knew what my misses were, and I was like, I came home to Scottsdale, and I was still signed up to play Reno, and I told my wife on I took Monday off, and then I went to the course on Tuesday just to hit some balls. And I was like, I left after like 40 minutes. I was like, I got it. I came home and I was like, I'm gonna go play this week. I got it. And I left Wednesday morning, played the pro am Wednesday afternoon, and went out and shot 68, 62, 66, and I just striped it. And I putted well and everything else too, but I striped it. And I had a 6 shot lead through 3 rounds. Um, and but I started to feel like it was going away a little bit on the last few holes on Saturday. And so I hit a couple balls in the range afterward, and I was like, just hitting them a little bit like low and on the heel.
Mhm.
And I was like, this is not a good feeling.
Yep.
And
We've
so
been there.
This
I go
doesn't feel
from
like Friday. This does not feel like Friday.
exactly. And I go from leading the field in ball striking through 3 rounds. I think I had hit like 75 or 80% of my greens and 75% of my fairways, and like leading the field in ball striking to then on Sunday, you guys are going to love this. I hit one green in regulation on the front nine.
Oh shit.
One. And I was even par.
Yeah. Oh.
On the back nine, I hit 4 greens in regulation. So I hit 5 greens total. It was the worst ball striking round by a PGA Tour winner for like the next 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I still won by more strokes than I started the day. I won by 7.
Wow.
But I went from feeling like I can't miss, like my shit is dialed, to then like I feel like I I can't find the center of the club face. I don't know if this is gonna like I half shanked one on 12 on Sunday. I half shanked a 6-iron into the desert.
I would have loved those conversations with the caddy. What do you got? You got 160 front edge. You got 172 carry that. You got 184. Where's my leave? Oh, front right. Okay, okay. Where can I get
No,
it up and down from? Right.
Yeah.
that's what I started. I mean, we started doing that on the way. I was like, where's my best miss here? And the guy who was my caddy, again, it was a last minute situation. So the guy who was my caddy was a local caddy. Like he was an assistant pro at the course.
Oh, that could have helped. Yeah.
And so he just kept, he's like, yeah, we want to miss it over here. Hey, we want to miss it over here. This is the best place to putt it from. So yeah, that's the disparity of golf of like, dude, you
Oh
feel
yeah.
like you're on top of the world, and then you
Yeah.
feel like, man, I just want to crawl in a hole and hide because I golf does not like me right now. My swing does not like me.
I mean,
But
I
it, but
just
it,
I encourage everybody, and we talked about shortgamechef.com, your website. You got a bunch of content there and YouTube, and just really dig into it. But a couple like technical questions of all the stuff you teach, I would say the harder of the things that I'm working on is the bunker. Because 30 years of aim left, drag it across, and I'm a good bunker player, but I have to play for that stupid low spinning, shooting right. Like I'm trying to like fade it into the hole. And so now I'm lining up square, but I don't quite have the feel yet. It's okay. So can you run through kind of just your basic level lie, square bunker shot technique? Just because that's the one thing I'm sticking on a little bit.
and before you do this, did you learn a lot? Because I think Azinger is one of the best bunker players there are. So I didn't know if you learned from him too on that. So sorry, I want to throw that in.
Oh, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know if there's been another human that has holed out more bunker
Yep.
shots, to
Exactly.
win golf tournaments or
Mm-hmm.
win Ryder Cup
Yep.
matches or whatever. I mean, like the guy is like insane when it comes to that. But yeah, I think that the philosophy out of the bunker has definitely changed over the last 30 years. And the way that you and I grew up was, yeah, aim left. And usually, like 30 years ago, 56 degree was our highest lofted wedge.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
sort of aim left. Yeah, aim left. Handle was kind of high and forward. And you would sort of just swing it along your feet line, and you would hope that it would get deflected towards the target.
Exactly.
You would never hit that shot like crazy high. It would always come out low. It would always come out, like you said, spinning into the right. And it was just very difficult to predict. So the modern bunker player has sort of shifted and plays these shots a lot more square with their feet set up and their shoulder set up. They get the hands a little bit more neutral or back,
Okay.
and they get the handle lower. And that's what helps square the face up without you really doing anything. Now that we have a 60-degree wedge or even higher lofted wedges than that as well. But as you lower that face or drop those hands back, you're actually squaring up the face in the process. So you don't have to swing so far left for a right-handed golfer. Now you can swing more down your feet line. And you can play around with the pressure that you're putting in your feet, whether it's 50-50 or 60-40 in your front foot, 80-20. Like there are matchups that go along with where you want to put pressure in your feet. But it'd be a good place to start with 50-50 and just sort of see where you are and then play with your ball position in relationship to where your pressure is. But that's a good place to start. And then
Okay.
you don't feel like you got to go straight up and then cut across it.
Right.
You can allow it to sort of be on plane or arc a little bit more with your backswing and your downswing. That's where I would start. And I
Okay.
visualize it more as like a lead hand type of a swing,
Okay.
right? I'm visualizing more with my lead hand, not as much with my trail hand.
Is it a release? Is it a hold on? Like
Yeah,
what is the follow through?
yeah, yeah. So here again, we're visualizing a Phil Mickelson where we're visualizing a lot of hinge, a lot of release, and then a lot of a rehinge on the other side.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I've started practicing with it and it's so simple, but it's still scary because I'm 90-10 forward, hands, back, trying to slice across it. And I'm like, I have to break all this. Like it's a weird thing, but it is so easy now. That's the one thing I've learned from all your videos and everything. Like the game is easier around the green. Like I'm so cocky right now, it's scary. Like,
I mean, I
it is.
love, and that's the whole thing. It's like the whole mission statement behind Short Game Chef has been to help the golfer modernize their short game so that your short game can be easier and that your golf game in general you can have more fun, you can shoot lower scores. Like that's the whole premise behind it, right?
Yeah.
This is not your grandfather's short game. That's sort of the thought
Yeah,
process.
and I love that, it seems like on most of your shots, your feet are narrower, the ball's even a little forward. Like I remember Cam Smith would talk about, he puts the ball forward, and I was like, there's no chance. There's no way. That scares me. But really, like it just feels simple. There's no crazy leg movement, body movement. It's just, a lot simpler. I think this is going to really revolutionize, the way people are learning the game because, like I said, I turn on the tour and Scotty's chipping like this, and Justin and like all the great chippers is like feet together, ball in a reasonable position, nothing back. You're not going to take a foot of sod. So I'm so excited to kind of follow this journey, and I'm glad your website is getting loaded up. I can't wait to just dive in there, and yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, we've got. I mean, I think like speaking of that too, we've got some cool stuff, and I'm sure you've taken a little bit of a dive into it. But besides the instructional stuff, there's really cool stuff in there with a lot of legends of the game. So,
hmm
I
hmm
mean,
Yeah.
I've gotten really lucky to spend time with Brad Faxon
Oh
talking
yeah,
about putting,
There you go.
Ben Crenshaw talking about putting for 45 minutes.
yeah,
Lee Trevino talking with Lee about short game and some of his philosophies. Matt Kuchar walks us through how he hits his pitch shot, which is like really next level stuff. And it's great visuals. Keith Mitchell. We've had lots of comments on the Matt Kuchar and the Keith Mitchell videos as far as like how the stuff that they say, it makes people just be like, oh my gosh, like that makes so much
yeah,
sense.
yeah. I
And
saw you
then we
just
just
had
added,
Oberholzer on, Aaron
we're
Oberholzer.
just adding Oberholzer
Yeah,
this week and the next 3 weeks going forward. And he's one of those ones too. Like he was a no frills kind of a player, and he did everything in his game to simplify
yeah,
everything.
yeah, yeah,
So it was just like, I'm gonna get my alignment correct. I'm gonna get my ball position proper every single time. I'm gonna get the shaft in the right spot, the club face in the right spot. I'm gonna make the simplest motion every time because he's like, I don't have Tiger's power. I don't have Brad Faxon's putting skills. I have to be the most efficient guy just to compete out here. And that was where he just went through and he was just like a psycho about just being diligent about all the little things to help him simplify his game. And he
yeah,
talks about it in such great detail in like chipping, 50-yard shots, putting, and bunker. And it's really cool because it's taking the thoughts and the secrets of someone like that who, in about 3 years' time went from a, a Canadian tour player to top 25 in the
yeah,
world,
yeah,
and then injuries kind of ruined his career. But he was like he was the guy right next to Tiger. They battled for 2 years in college against each other.
yeah.
Yeah, and
Unbelievable.
I love how simple it is. Even your video with Trevino, how you hold the club in your left hand. I mean, it's that
Yeah,
easy. Like, don't hold it in your right hand when you're coming to your shot. Hold it in your left hand. Just is keep it as simple as possible, and then believing in your ability. And I think this is great that you're getting the backing, you're getting the support from your peers to come on and really promote what you're teaching because they believe in what you're saying. And that's awesome. Good for you and congratulations.
yeah, thanks.
Hope the sky's the limit.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think that the thing about professional golf and and then just the state of golf in general. I think that, you know, professional golf has been in such turmoil for the last few years that you know, the weird thing is that the fan of professional golf is sort of like, where do I go? Am I a live guy or am I a PGA
Yep.
guy? Do I just not care anymore? But the state of like golf in general, I
Yes.
mean, I'm sure you guys see it. It's just like it's
We've
exploded,
talked
and
about that.
people are
Yeah.
yeah, people are so fired up on the game itself. I mean, it's hard to get tee times. It's hard, you know. It's like it is wild how popular the game of golf is, and in that sort of spirit, I'm trying to take some of the things that I've learned from playing on tour and being friends with these guys who are high level players on the tour scene now, and take those secrets and give it to the new group of people that are coming into the game that are like, I love the game, yet I hate the game. It's so hard. And so that's where I'm trying to be that guy that comes in there and says like, look, it doesn't have to be quite as hard. Here are some simple recipes that you guys can use to go from being you know, a shitty chef where you're just, you know, microwaving Chef Boyardee to then to, you know, to then
I
being
love
like
it.
to having some like, you know, Bobby Flay recipes where you can
Yes.
be like, yeah, like I can cook like some of these tour players.
Well, if they want to reach out to you, go to shortgamechef.com. Is that the best way to start the process and get in
Yeah,
good
that's
contact with you?
all my best videos and like my best instructional stuff from like soup to nuts is on shortgamechef.com.
Okay.
Instagram is the best way currently to kind of like reach out and see little snippets here and there. And if you want, you know, DM on Instagram is probably the best way if you personally want to reach out. But I would say that the website, we just redid it. It's a new and great experience. It'll be in like a mobile app form in the next 45 days. It'll be on smart TV as an app in the next 45 to 60 days. We're going to start translating it into different languages. So
Oh my
um,
gosh,
Oh,
that is
yeah,
that's
it's
awesome.
that's
Well,
so
yeah,
exciting. Well, you can tell we're incredible nerdy fans of yours, like maybe over the top. And so anytime you want to come back on, you're like, hey, we want to come back on, just do like 15 minutes. I want to tell you what I'm working on. I want to introduce you to another guy. You can come on with a guest. Let us, you know, be your promoter. And then we got to get together and golf sometime. If you're in LA, come play with John and I at Lakeside. And if we're in Arizona, we're gonna have to book you at McCormick and drive
no,
with you
we'll
back
have
to
to
the.
go to the Rock. We're gonna have to Whisper
we,
Rock. We'll go get our boy Joe Scovrin to come on and be our fourth.
Yeah,
So
we had
that's
Joe on the
right.
podcast, and we'll get McCord and get the whole gang lined up. But it's this is the most exciting thing I've seen in a long time, Parker, and I'm so happy for you. And
Thank you.
I love it. I'm gonna just keep grinding and, you know, keep working on your system because it is so simple. It has really taken any nerves out of the game, and so I appreciate what you're doing.
Dude, thank you guys. Thanks for having me on, man. This is fun. I love what you guys are doing, and
thanks.
yeah, let's do it again in the near future.
You better believe it. Yeah, this is
All
just
right.
now a one and done. We'll have you back on for sure.
Thank you, Parker. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
You got it.
Parker.
My pleasure,
Appreciate it.
All right,
All
guys.
see
right.
ya.
Cheers.